Welcome to this HTML video where we'll be discussing page layout, and the first thing we'll discuss is the box model. The box model, as it says here on W3 School's website, is essentially a box that wraps around every HTML element. Now it's not every HTML element, it's only the block tags that you have in HTML, which I'll talk about later. But essentially each HTML tag has a height and a width of the box. And then the box also has some padding that pads the content. So if this green square rectangle is the box, then we have some padding that pushes the content inside of the box away from the edge. Then we have the border itself, which can be very thick or very thin in different styles around the box. And finally, we have some margin that pushes the box away from boxes nearby, and we can control the margin all the way around the box. So I have a pretty basic page here with a header, nav, main, and footer sections on our page, and I've given the header and the navigation a background color so that we can see the box that they create. Now, boxes are only created by block tags, and most of the tags you use are block tags. The only tag that isn't a block tag is the anchor link tag, and some other tags that are not are phrase tags, which include emphasis and strong and mark, and also image tags are not block tags either. So these tags just go in line with the rest of the text. In fact, they're called inline tags. So all of the margin, padding, and border only applies to the block tags, which are most of the other tags we use. So every block tag has a width and a height, and by default the width will stretch for the entire width of the screen or whatever is available to it. And the height will automatically adjust to the height of the content inside of it. Unless you tell it otherwise through CSS, you can tell the height of my navigation is taller than just these links. And also the width of my header has now been shrunk, or is now smaller than the entire width of the screen. Now let's talk about margin. And the margin, as you saw earlier, is the space outside of the box, and we can control the margin separately. Like the margin on the top, we can give this 50 pixels, and as soon as the changes take effect, you can see that the box moved down on our page because the margin pushed it away from the edge. So we can also add margin on the bottom, and you can see that that increases the margin down below the box. Now I do want to talk about one thing that's a little bit tricky with margin. If you can tell, there's no margin on this nav tag, and there's no margin on the bottom of this header tag, so why is there a space in between here? And that's because by default, H1 tags and paragraph tags have a little bit of top and bottom margin to kind of separate the text out and make it look nice. So if by default this H1 tag has a margin, but if you notice the H1 tag is inside of the header, so why is it pushing this space here? Well, the margin actually goes through its containing box, which is the header, and pushes the nav box away from it. So if we were to select that H1 tag and give it 0 margin, then these two boxes will be stacked right on top of each other. So that is a little bit tricky, that the H1 tags or whatever is inside of a box, its margin will actually push through its box to push things away from it. Now, it could be a little tedious to have margin top, margin left, margin right, so we can do a couple of shortcuts as we describe our margin with just the margin tag. And we could say the margin for everything is 50 pixels. So this is the top, bottom, left, and right of the box. And we can't really see the right side because there's still all of this space over here, but we have 50 pixels of margin all the way around this box. And then we can also have the margin on the top and the bottom be one thing, and the margin on the left and the right side be different. So this controls the top and the bottom, and this controls the left and the right. And when the changes take effect, you can see that it's just a itty bitty tiny 3 pixels of margin on this side and this side, and there's 50 pixels of margin on the top and the bottom. And the final way to do it is to control each side on its own, so we can get the top. And the best way to remember this is it works like a clock. So the top of the hour, usually at 12, it points up. So that's the first measurement. Then the right is the second, so it moves in the direction of a clock. The right, bottom, and then the left. So by setting them all individually, we can see we have 20 pixels of margin up here at the top. Can't really see that there's 30 pixels of margin here because there's all of this space, and that's due to the width again. And then we also have 300 pixels of margin down below the box and 200 pixels to the left of the box. The margins will overlap. You can see that I've added 40 pixels of margin to the top of the navigation box and 30 pixels of margin to the top and the bottom of this header box. And so the total distance between these two boxes will actually be 40 pixels, not 30 pixels, because this is how much space you want below or above you. And as long as you get at least 40, you'll be happy. And as long as the header gets at least 30 pixels below him, then this header will be happy as well. So they'll overlap, and then it will just get 40 pixels of space between us. Another thing that margin can do is it can center boxes on the screen. Now, a lot of people think the text-align center is the way that we can center boxes onto the screen. So we could see in our header tag, we have this text right here, and the entire box is kind of pushed off here to the left side and not in the center. So one might assume that we can just go text-align center, and you can see that the text inside of the box got centered, but the box itself is not centered. So first of all, text-align only works on elements inside the box, not where the box is on the page itself. Second, because it's called text-align, it only works on text. It doesn't work on boxes itself. It just works on the text that's inside of the box. So that's not how we center boxes on the page. Instead, we use the margin. So you can see that I've changed this to just 30 pixels on the top, but I've added a margin left auto, and auto means take up the rest of the space of whatever you have available to you. Now, because this header tag has a width, it's not going to take up the full width of the screen. It's only going to take up 300 pixels. That means all the rest of the space is to be distributed with the margin when we use the auto. So if we just put it on one side, then we get this moved to the right. And if we use the margin on the right side as auto, as you can imagine, the margin will fill in over here and move the box to the left. But if we add the margin onto both sides, then you can see that the margin will evenly divide between the left and the right side, and it will center our box. So this is how you center the box, and we can do this shortcut and have the margin on the top and the bottom be 30 pixels and the margin on the left and the right be auto. And the same thing will happen. We'll get the box in the center. Now, padding is the space between the edges of the box and the content inside. So margin is on the outside and padding is on the inside. And it works just the same way as margin. You can set the padding all the way around with one number. You can do padding dash top, left, right, and bottom to set the padding on one side only. Or you can use two numbers, the first number indicating the top and bottom padding, and the second the left and the right padding. Or you can use four numbers, where the first number is the top padding, and then going around like a clock, you go 30 pixels on the right, 100 pixels on the bottom, and just 3 itty bitty tiny pixels on the left. Now there is no padding auto, and by the way, whenever you want to use a 0, you don't want any padding or any margin, you do not put a measurement behind it, like px or anything like that. Now also, speaking of measurements, you can see from this suggestion here, there's lots of different ways that we can indicate a measurement. And this works for padding and margin and our width and also our height. And also when we talk about the border, the measurements there as well. So we can use pixels, which is pretty popular. And you can also use millimeters, centimeters, and those are fixed measurements. And then you can use relative measurements like percentages. For example, for the width of this box, I've been saying 300 pixels, but we can say maybe make it 70% of the width of the screen. And then whatever the screen space is available, this will take up 70% of it. So we can adjust the page like this, and you can see that the box will adjust based on the size of our screen. We have borders, and to set a border, we do it with the border width property, and that's how thick the line is on our border. And then the color we want our border, and then our border style. We have solid, but we can also do dotted or dashed or other styles as well. Now there is a shortcut property where we can assign these all with one property. So we can do the border, and then we can do our thickness, 3 pixels, solid, and then our color afterward. One image tag that happens to not be a block tag. So how can we tell it's not a block tag? We have some text here, then an image tag and some more text, and you can see that the image tag goes right in line with the rest of the text. So it's really an inline tag. It's actually a little more specific. It's an inline block tag because we can assign an image a height and a width, but it still falls in line with the rest of the text. Now because image tags are like that, it's very often that we want them to be a block tag. Now there is a way, which we'll just talk about in the future, where we can make this image tag a block tag, but the most common way to make it a block tag is just to surround it in a figure tag. So a figure tag, it means we have some sort of figure, and it could be a table or anything else that we want to feature on our page, and we just surround our image or whatever figure we have with the figure tag, and now it becomes a block tag, and you can see that the text starts below, and then the figure tag has taken up the full row of our display, and then the rest of the text is pushed down below it. So that's what a block tag is. It wants to be the entire width of the screen, so it hogs up the full width of the screen, and it allows the text before and after it have to fall above and below the tag. Now there's also a figure caption, and the figure caption also goes inside of the figure tag, and we'll get a nice little figure down below. Now the figure tag is just like any other block tag, except for the contents inside of it is supposed to be some sort of figure. So we can add borders, padding, and margin, and you can see that we have a thin solid border around our picture, and we can also adjust the width of the border so that it comes up and surrounds our picture. And so you can see we get a nice little border around this that captures both our picture and the caption. Now, one issue with web page layout is that some people have really big monitors and other people have really small monitors, and it could be hard to design a page that works on both the big monitors and the small monitors. So one option you have is to add a wrapper tag around all of your content. So what I mean by that is we're creating a div tag. I gave it an ID of wrapper, and I closed it down here. Now if you notice, it starts right after the body tag, and it ends right before the closing body tag. So it wrapped all of our content on our page. The next thing I did is in my body, I gave us a light blue background, but it can be any colored background color. And then we can select that wrapper tag and give it a width. Now 600 pixels is because I'm sharing my screen side by side. We'd probably want this width to be about 900 pixels because that works well with the small monitors, 800, 900 pixels. And so that's going to be the width of our entire content. And then all we need to do is center this wrapper by using the margin auto. So what that does is it leaves our content in the center. And then when people have really big monitors, our content stays the same size, so it's easy to lay it out in a a predictable pattern, even if they have wide margins or a very wide screen. And then if we shrink our screen to maybe a smaller laptop view, then the content is again the same size, and we just are missing some space on the sides. To make this to make it look a little bit nicer, we can also add a background color to the wrapper, and usually a white background will work unless you kind of want to go with a dark mode look. And now we have all of this space, and this space here, this background color here is what increases when we get wider monitors, but as we decrease the space, then it shrinks that space up. But then it's pretty easy to kind of lay out the rest of the content on our page. And maybe one final touch could be adding a border to the wrapper, and that just kind of frames all of our content. And of course we probably want to make all of this look better, but now we have our content all in one page. We know it's a fixed size, and when people with a really big monitor look at our page, it'll still lay out pretty nicely, and they'll just get extra space on the side.